Hey guys, Grant here. In this video, I'm going to walk you through finding different sites that accept guest posts. Now, we've got this really awesome spreadsheet to help you keep track of everything. And so we're going to be going through and filling out the URL, the site type, the tier, domain authority, traffic, first name, last name, contact, etc. And we've also got in this other category of columns here, this is just where we're going to track the progress of outreach. So if you remember, there's a couple different steps to outreaching for guest posts. So we're going to be able to keep track of all of that for a larger number of people, so we can do it all at once, but keep everything organized. And you can find this spreadsheet below this video as well. So the first way we're going to start with this is to go to the Search Operators tab and use the Advanced Search Operators searches that we've talked about before. Now, this will depend a little bit on your keyword, but we built this similarly to some of the last lessons, to where you can just type in your keyword here. So whether we've got skincare, it'll automatically give you this list of over 50 different search operators that you can use that are designed to help you find blogs to target for your guest post campaign. But let's go with Paleo Diet. So you can see we've got Paleo Diet is a guest post from, this is a guest post by, this post was written by. These are different little quoted search operators that will help indicate that something was written by a guest post. So we can just take this, and we're going to be searching in Google, just taking those little pre-formulated search operators. So now we're going to look at the results, and we've got these different posts here, and now we're going to open them up and check them and see if we like them, see if we want to save them in our spreadsheet. Okay, so now we're looking at the first result of our search with the first keyword, and we can immediately see that this is indeed a guest post by mummymade.it. And so basically we just take a look, and we verified that it's a guest post. We take a look at the site itself. Does it look pretty solid? Does it have engagement? Yeah, it looks pretty well designed. And we can also check with the Moz toolbar, which you should have installed. We've talked about that before. It's the Moz bar, and it's a Google Chrome extension. And it shows that it has a domain authority of 47, which is pretty good. And it seems like it would be worthwhile to write a guest post on a site with that domain authority. So the next thing we do is take the domain itself and run it on SEMrush. Okay, so now we've searched for paleomagazine.com on SEMrush, and guess what? They were getting over 40,000 organic searches per month. So this is what we wanted to check out mainly is, not only do they have a good domain authority, but they're getting significant traffic. So if we get a guest post there, it's going to get significant referral traffic to us, as well as have a high domain authority from this domain to give us some link juice. So over 40,000. And if you remember from the previous lessons, we talked about how this traffic number is actually very, very much underestimated, and is likely 2 to 3 times the number that you see here. So this is really, really good results. A couple other things that we can look at is the trend of traffic, which is going up, as you can see over the years, and also the number of keywords that it ranks for. It ranks for almost 50,000 keywords. So immediately we can say this is a very good domain to guest post for. Okay, so now that we've verified that the website we just inspected is worth pursuing because it has significant traffic, domain authority, it looks legitimate, and it clearly accepts guest posts, let's go ahead and record the information in our spreadsheet. So we've got the domain, which we add in here. We've got the site type, which clearly it was a blog, but some of them might be a magazine or other type of publication that might accept a guest post. Tier is something we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail at a later time, but to quickly give you an idea, basically it's a evaluation of which ones we should focus on first, right? Is it a tier 1 blog that is one of the best prospects that we should absolutely target first? Is it mediocre or lower traffic or lower domain authority? Then it might be a tier 2 or 2-3, which is only good to pursue after you go through the tier 1 blogs. But the flip side, of course, being tier 1 blogs are probably harder to land a guest post on. So that's an evaluation that we'll be talking about later. And then, of course, we've got the domain authority, which was 47. The traffic was 40,100. And We've also got a couple other fields here, such as first name, last name, contact, etc. This is something we'll be filling out later, but we're not going to do it now. And the reason is because we're going to make some other evaluations, which will cause us to remove some of the sites that we're adding to this list right now, and we don't want to waste time filling out information that we're not going to use later. So we'll save that for later. Okay, now this last column we need to pay attention to here is the guest posting guidelines column. Now this is probably something you've stumbled across before as a page that describes the process for submitting and formatting any kind of guest post which is submitted. Now, let's go through how to find this. It's not always immediately easy to find, but there's a couple of different ways that we can look for it. The first would be just to go to the website and scroll all the way to the bottom. And if it's a blog, there's a decent chance that it has the guest posting guidelines link somewhere in the footer. This one actually does not. So let's go to some of our backup methods. The first one would be to search for site, then the domain, and then the words guest posting guidelines, because usually that's some formulation of the title of the page that will have that information. And scrolling down, it looks like they do not have a page like that. There's one other way that we can search for it as well, which is to do the same thing, but instead to search for site, domain, and then use the term right for us, because oftentimes they'll have a page that says right for us, which is the page where you submit guest posts. Now, if we look down here, it also looks like they don't have a version of that page either. So what we're going to do is just put NA. If they had had a page that came up for any of those three methods, we would have saved the link here, and then we could have referenced that later as we're submitting any kind of guest post. Now, it's also not a big deal if it's not there, if they don't have that information. Don't worry, it's still worth including on your list. Just put NA, but if they do have it, make sure to include the link here. But the reason why it's not a big deal, there's a couple different reasons. Well, first off, it might mean they're just a little bit more lenient on the formatting, and they don't have a concrete system for accepting guest posts. But there's actually a kind of side benefit to not having a publicly posted page for accepting guest posts. And the reason is that means they probably don't accept a whole lot of them, which might mean it's a little bit harder to get one on their site. But the flip side of that is if you do, the link is much, much, much more valuable. So oftentimes what happens is pages that have these links here that give the guest post guidelines and make it very easy to submit a guest post, what happens is they accept a whole lot of them. Some sites even accept almost 100% of the guest posts that meet their formatting guidelines. And then, of course, if you get a guest post there as well, the value of your link is much less valuable to you. So anyways, if it's here, put it here. If it's not, just NA, and that's not a determining factor in what we include on the list. Okay, so now we've talked about how to find sites that accept guest posts through Google. If you've remembered, as we talked about before, social media can be a really effective tool for finding similar sites as well. So let's talk about a couple of different ways to do that. First off, you can do the same kind of process on Twitter. For example, if you take your keyword and search for that plus, quote, guest post, then what's going to happen is you're going to very, very easily find all of these different guest posts, right? And they're all recent. They're probably going to be, many of them will be very interacted with and on very reputable different blogs. Now, we can also do the exact same thing on Google+. So we can go to Google+, again, use your keyword, in this case, paleo diet, quote, guest post. Now we're going to have the same thing, many, many submissions across social media. So what happens is blogs will take posts that they have written and publish them across social media, so it's a really good tool for that. Now, you're going to want to make sure to click most recent rather than just best of, and that's going to make everything in reverse chronological order, and that way we can find the most recent post first, and so that way it's not a post that was submitted, many years ago. Now, there's another approach that we can use as well, and this third method is to actually find the prolific guest posters in our industry and follow them and see where they guest post. So, for example, you can take whatever industry you're in, whatever niche you have, there's probably a couple people that are constantly guest posting all over the internet on related sites. So, for example, in the online marketing world, if you're familiar with it, Neil Patel is an example of somebody who's constantly guest posting. He writes very frequently for a large number of sites. And so basically what we can do is find people like this. So if you're in the online marketing world, this is an example of one that would work for you. And then we could, for example, if that's our niche, we can follow him and see the places that he's guest posting and then use those as references for people we should also try to reach out to and be able to guest post with as well. So let me show you how to actually use this information and find sites to guest post on. Okay, so the way we can do this is take the person's name and, again, use the advanced search operators and have something along the lines of, quote, guest post by, and then have their name, right? Most guest posts start out with, this is a guest post by blank, blank, blank. And then we can just go down the list and find a really good example of a site to reach out to. It takes a little bit of scanning, possibly opening all these up to see which is which. And in the online marketing world, it's a little bit different because a lot of these are about guest posting rather than a guest post by. If you're in a paleo niche or something, it's not going to have that issue. So this one, for example, this entry is a guest post by Neil Patel, co-founder of Kissmetrics. So if we open that up, this is a guest post that we have from Neil Patel. And so we can basically reach out to the same site and see if we can guest post here as well. Now, this is not the only way to do this. We can also take their profiles and, for example, usually people build profiles and use the same kind of headshot or image in a whole bunch of different places. So what we can do is find a profile that they have where they're using an image and right-click and click Search Google for Image. So what Google does when you do this is it basically searches the internet for the same image on all websites, and also similar images as well. So now what we can do is just scroll down. Okay, well, he's got the same thing on Twitter. Oh, okay, he writes for entrepreneur.com. He writes for crazyegg.com. He writes for forbes.com. There's the social media. And basically, you can go down the list and find all of the sites that somebody writes for. And then now you know, hey, if I'm in online marketing, I should reach out to Crazy Egg, to entrepreneur.com, to Forbes, etc., and go down the list. So if we go to the next page, we can also expand the list as well. There's HubSpot, there's Creative Live, SearchEngineJournal.com, Huffington Post, SearchEngineLand.com, all with the same image, right? So we can just go down and find all of these entries. And for example, again, if we're in online marketing, then we have an extensive list of places that we can add to this spreadsheet. So again, you're going to want to use all the methods that we've just talked about and expand out your list here, fill in this information. And in the upcoming steps that we're going to be going through, we're actually going to go through this data that we've put in here and narrow down the results so we can choose the best options to focus our time and money and energy on, because you don't want to waste your time on a low return kind of site. So we'll be focusing on the biggest wins in terms of guest posting. So stay tuned for those upcoming steps.